Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, this will be different than most State of the Union addresses you've heard in the past. Far too often, political leaders have told you what you wanted to hear, not what you needed to hear. Far too many politicians have danced around serious issues rather than dealing with them head on. Far too many politicians have made big promises without telling you how they plan to pay for them. Far too many politicians have spent their time focusing on what divides us at the expense of the ties that bind us. All too often, politicians have been so worried about the next election that they forgot about the next generation. Enough is enough. Tonight we'll begin a candid, adult conversation about the true state of our union. We must take an honest look at where we are, reflect on how we got here, and have a serious, mature discussion about where we go from here. As I traveled this great country over the past 2 years, one thing became even clearer than I could ever have imagined. America is filled with great people who love God, love their families, love our nation, and want to work hard and make a better life for themselves and their children. And the federal government needs to get out of their way, not stand in it. For the better part of a century, America was the undisputed leader of the free world. In World War II, our greatest generation helped turn back the face of tyranny by leading the fight to defeat Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan. That war would likely have ended differently, and our world would be a much darker place today, if not for the United States of America. We put a man on the moon. We stood down the Soviet Union and won the Cold War. Our nation has been the source of much of the world's innovation over the past 100 years. America has been a beacon, the beacon of freedom and hope to those who have neither. That has been our past, and it can be our future if we're willing to make the tough decisions that demand to be made. Before I discuss the specific steps we must take to get America back on track, it's appropriate to reflect upon the things that made America the greatest nation on earth. Let's start with our Constitution. I challenge every person in this room, as well as every person watching at home, to read and study our Constitution. Get to know it, understand how it applies. Learn what the framers were thinking when they crafted this great document. Don't believe the snippets you hear on television. Read it for yourself. The Constitution of the United States outlines a framework for the greatest free government this world has ever seen. A system centered on the people, not the bureaucracy. A system in which the government derives its power from we the people, not the other way around. A system which recognizes that our rights are bestowed by God, not by the government. I fear that we have strayed from the timeless principles for which our founding fathers pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. We live in a great republic, but tonight I'm reminded of Benjamin Franklin's timeless words. A lady asked him what form of government they had instituted. His centuries-old response speaks to us today. A republic, if you can keep it. I'm also reminded of the words of another great American, President Ronald Reagan, who admonished us that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. That's the question before us today. Can we keep this great republic? Or will we one day be relegated to telling our children and grandchildren what life was like in the United States? Again, I believe our Constitution outlines the framework for the greatest free society this world has ever seen. The Constitution protects our God-given rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom to assemble. It protects our private property rights. It ensures that no one person and no one branch of government has too much power over the people. We must return to those constitutional principles if America is to once again be the world's greatest beacon of freedom, hope, and opportunity. America is full of God-fearing, hard-working people who want to earn a living and take care of their families. To those of you watching at home, I believe you're more than capable of running your lives without the government watching over and micromanaging everything you do. What you need is for the federal government, and this goes for state and local governments as well, to get out of the way and let you live your lives. Unfortunately, there are some in this country, and many who have stood in this building, even some who have stood at this podium, who have pushed the federal government into more and more aspects of your lives. They promise you everything and make the next generation pay for it. It's been said that a government big enough to give you everything you want is strong enough to take everything you have. We must resist the temptation to go further down that perilous path. If this Constitution does not specifically give the federal government the authority to do something, we shouldn't be doing it, period. Unfortunately, for far too long, our federal government has tried to be all things to all people, and every pet project, every handout, every new program costs money. The politicians have run up the bill with well-meaning initiative after well-meaning initiative, all of which sound good in a speech or a 30-second ad and look good on paper, but none of which we can afford. That's why our national debt is now over $20 trillion. We simply cannot continue piling on more debt for future generations to pay. That's why we must